A quorum call?
We are, sir.
I'd ask that it be vitiated.
Without objection.
I believe when I left, my amendment was pending, Amendment 2697. And I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about that. I know somebody else is coming to the floor here rather quickly, and I have about 5 minutes, I've been told by the cloakroom. Congressional creation of the National Association of Registered Agents and Brokers, the bill that has been attached to the flood bill, usurps the rights of states' authority over insurancing, licensing, and regulations. Congress established the McCarran-Ferguson Act that states should retain the regulatory authority over insurance laws. Well, NARAB 2 was crafted to retain primacy of insurance regulations and enforcement actions within the states. This bill will nevertheless compel states to accept a national license within their jurisdiction. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office stated the association's authority would exist only through a preemption of states' power to regulate the licensing of insurance producers. This preemption would stem from an exercise of the sovereign power of the federal government. NARAB 2 provides the president and his or her appointee the authority to nullify the decisions made by the NARAB board, but does not extend any of the same rights to the individual states. This amendment will my amendment will provide a state the opportunity to opt out of participation in NARAB only through the passage of legislation by the state legislature and signature of the governor, and it will not allow a state insurance commissioner to opt out on a whim. To prevent a disruptive transition, this amendment requires a 2-year delay between passage of this state legislation and the effective date of an opt-out. So you can't get out just like that. It's 2 years. In order to maintain the foundation of reciprocity and prevent states from gaming the provision for a competitive advantage, insurance producers located within a state that opts out of NARAB would be ineligible from participating in the NARAB system. So if your state opt-out, you lose the privilege of going to other states. The inclusion of this provision would accomplish the bill's goal of streamlining and cost savings without the continuation of Congress infringing on activities that should be left to the states. The amendment will still allow the benefits provided by a multi-state licensing process to reduce the bureaucracy involved for producers to access customers in other states, which will help increase competition and lower consumer costs, things that I'm totally for. Actually, I'm for this bill, but only with preserving the 10th Amendment rights of states. The provision will also provide a safeguard from NARAB if 10 years from now it's not as working as well as current consensus has hoped, and a state or states no longer wish to participate. As the bill's proponents have already pointed out, NARAB has the support of every state and every insurance producer. They all agree. If that's the case, and this is so popular and such a needed reform, then no state will opt out. And the opt-out provision would be moot while still protecting the state's rights. I understand the opposition to this, that they think this won't get off the ground. But the very statements have been made both in the committee and on the floor that everybody wants this. All the insurance industry wants this. All the state insurance commissioners want this. If that's the case, nobody will opt out. And we will have met our constitutional duty of providing and protecting the Bill of Rights for the states. I just finished by saying this. One of the reasons we're in extreme difficulty, we're in what physicians would call extremis, is that we have ignored states' rights. We have ignored the Bill of Rights, and we've said we're prime. So as CBO said, we're stepping all over this. And I understand I probably won't be able to stop it, but it's another indication of why we need the Enumerated Powers Act. And that's simply a bill sponsored by 44 senators that says if you bring a bill to the floor, you have to give the authority under which the enumerated powers would justify you bringing this bill to the floor. To make us pause, just to think about it. I don't think it's unreasonable. People may disagree about whether states ought to have the right to opt out, but if the program is such as has been designed by the authors of this bill and the statements by the people who have spoken on this bill on the floor, if that's the case, putting this amendment in won't harm it at all. It won't ever be used. So it's simply saying if they want to opt out, it's 2 years after they vote in their legislature and signed by the governor before they can, so there's no disruption. Nobody's going to do that if it's true what everybody who is supporting this bill has said. So it's peculiar and curious to me why anybody would oppose this amendment if, in fact, the facts are as stated by those supporting the NAREB 2. And I support it. But I think we ought to protect the state's right, constitutional rights. And with that, I yield the floor.